It's the cornerstone of Rudy Giuliani's presidential campaign, the 9/11 terror attacks. But now an unlikely group is trying to undermine that with an effort that some are comparing to the Swift Boat campaign against John Kerry. CNN's Deborah Farrick is joining us now. She's watching all of this unfold. So who's challenging, Deb, Rudy Giuliani's 9/11 credentials?
Well, Wolf, this is not a new group. In fact, the faces to many New Yorkers are familiar. These are people who have repeatedly criticized Rudy Giuliani's handling of 9/11 and all the events before and after that day. The big question, can this small group gain momentum? And if so, what does that mean to the mayor's candidacy? This is the image many Americans have of Rudy Giuliani. The New York City mayor covered in dust moments after the World Trade Center towers collapsed. It is an image he has invoked in his run for the White House to spotlight his leadership on that tragic day. But Sally Reaganhart and others are challenging that image.
Rudy Giuliani is no hero of 9/11.
Reaganhart's son was one of 343 New York City firefighters to die when the towers fell. She is part of a small, determined group of firefighter families taking on the former mayor.
We want to give people the opportunity to hear the true story and to make their own decisions.
On Monday, the group traveled to New Hampshire, a crucial state where Mr. Giuliani recently began running these ads.
I believe I've been tested in a way in which the American people can look to me. They're not going to find perfection, but they're going to find somebody who's dealt with crisis.
The families told a handful of people about some of the fire department radios that didn't work on 9/11, about the emergency command center intended to coordinate a response that instead literally collapsed, and about the lack of respirators provided to firefighters searching for colleagues in a toxic rubble. Political scientist Doug Muzio says these issues are not new, at least not to New Yorkers.
There is a lot of hyperbole in what Rudy Giuliani says about what he did prior to 9/11, on 9/11, and after 9/11, but the kernel of truth is that Rudy Giuliani had his finest hour on 9/11.
The Giuliani campaign cited news reports praising Giuliani's efforts on behalf of firefighters and touting the city's preparedness. A former fire commissioner speaking on Giuliani's behalf accused Reaganhart's group of, quote, turning the terrorist attacks of September 11th into a political football. The question now, is this another Swift Boat situation in which unsubstantiated attacks against John Kerry's service in Vietnam scuttled his presidential candidacy? These families say no.
The difference between the Swift boating and this is that everything that we're saying is the truth.
Now, over the summer, these firefighter families appeared in a scathing anti-Giuliani video made by the International Association of Firefighters. Giuliani's representative called the group highly partisan. It is endorsing Democrat Chris Dodd, but says it is not part of this particular New Hampshire trip. Still, that firefighters unit is meeting after Thanksgiving to consider a much larger campaign against the former mayor. Wolf.
Deb Farrick in New York, thanks very much. For that, we're joined by Jim Riches. He's a deputy chief of the New York Fire Department. He lost his son in the attacks. Our condolences, Chief, going out to you and your family. I know you're part of this group. Let's get right to the issue. Are you trying to, quote, Swift boat Rudy Giuliani?
No, we're going to set the record straight on 9/11, and we don't think he's the hero that he says he was or the leader, because there's many points. They had radios he had recommendations in 93. We had the same radios in 2001. He didn't replace them. We didn't have a unified coordinated command. We didn't have interagency coordinated drills down at the World Trade Center from 93 to 2001. We had an OEM, which was supposedly his highlight, his hallmark of his tenure, Giuliani, to be the main player in this operation. They were considered useless and invisible that day. And then we had incompetent commissioners there. We had firemen as the fire commissioner, a police officer as the police commissioner. They ran. OEM director was a fire dispatcher. These guys took off and ran before the towers fell, and everything is documented in the 9/11 Commission and in the NIST reports and the McKinsey reports. They show the failings of the Giuliani administration.
I had a chance yesterday to speak with the co-chairman of the 9/11 Commission report, the former New Jersey Governor Tom Kean, and I asked him about some of these criticisms of Rudy Giuliani. Listen to what Tom Kean said.
The lack of communications was not Rudy Giuliani's fault. It was because they didn't have the same frequency they're operating on, and we didn't have any criticism in the report of people who failed to anticipate some of the things that happened. Nobody did.
Rudy Giuliani did a very great job on that day of 9/11.
I take it you disagree with the commission chairman.
I disagree totally. In 1993, we had a recommendation to get new radios. He never got them. He ordered illegal radios that were defective. He didn't field test them. We had them pulled back. My son went back with the same radio. They didn't work in 93. They didn't work in 2001. And the police officers heard the call to come down. They testified at the 9/11 Commission. And as they were going down, the firemen were going up, and they told the firemen, get out. And the firemen said, we never heard the order. And the firemen continued up to their death. It's Rudy Giuliani's job and Tom Von Essen, who was a fireman who never passed the promotional exam, to get us radios that worked. The police officers had radios that worked that day, and we didn't. And I think Tom Kane, he softballed Rudy Giuliani in the 9/11 Commission hearings.
Let's talk about your political operation right now. I take it that you're thinking of creating what's called a 527, a committee that would raise money to go after a specific candidate without being directly involved in any other candidate. Is that right?
We're all we're from conservatives, we're Democrats, and I voted for Bush, and I voted for Giuliani 3 times. This is not political, it's strictly about his leadership. He's been out there making millions and millions of dollars talking about his leadership and what a great leader he was on 9/11, and he's politicized 9/11 from day one, and Howard Safir yesterday said it was unconscionable that the families politicized 9/11. Well, that's a lie, because they've politicized it from day one, and if he wants to run on his record of failure and everything else, then let him run on it. We're going to set the truth out, and everything is out in all those commission reports and the McKinsey report, how we failed miserably, the first responders, and put our sons in danger that day with inoperable radios, no cooperation, and the same mistakes were made in 93 were made again in 2001.
So, Chief, are you going to form this committee?
We're going to sit down and discuss it with the family members. We've spoken to lawyers, and if we have to put our message out throughout the country and get it on TV, TV made him a hero that day, because all he did was get on TV and calm the nation. That's all he did. He ran before the towers fell like a coward with all his future millionaires, and they took off and left the real heroes down there. And that's a shame, and we will tell the message the way it's told, the correct way, and not lies like Howard Safir and all his little cronies say that we got the right respirators. We didn't get the right respirators, and they're lying if they said we did.
Jim Riches is a he's an active duty fire chief in New York City. Jim Riches, once again, our condolences to you for losing your son on 9/11. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.